Okay, welcome to today's seminar on Rethink Budgeting, Planning, and Forecasting, the struggles and success of modern finance teams. Today's session is going to be a collaborative effort between Insight Software and Hanover Research. So let's take a look at the agenda. We'll first go through a survey background. We'll move to budgeting, planning, and forecasting needs and gap identification. We'll then go to priorities for finance teams, and then finally the BizView solution, and then have a wrap up with Q&A. So let's meet the presenters. James?
Yeah, thank you very much. Would love to do a quick intro here. My name is James Wilcox. I'm a managing director at Hanover Research. Been here for the past 7 years. And then prior to that, I was with another market research consulting firm looking at emerging markets across the APAC region. So really excited to jump into the results and share some insights of what we found here.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm Darius Malone, Senior Solution Engineer here at Insight Software. I've been at Insight Software now for 14 years. I've been in the ERP space or budgeting planning for well over 30 plus years. So I'm happy to go through the webinar today. So let's take a look at Insight Software and look at some of the facts and figures. We enable the office of the CFO to connect to and make sense of their enterprise data in real-time fashion, so they can proactively drive greater financial intelligence across their organization, which is how best-in-class finance teams operate. So if you look at the revenues for Insight Software, we're well over 500 million. We have over 500,000 users across the globe with over 30,000 customers and more than 2,000 employees globally. And we serve countries of 150 plus, and our worldwide locations are 40 plus. Our common focus is business data. That's where your ERP sits, and we break that down into 3 areas: finance, operations, and then technology. And then you can see across or around the spectrum there how we assist in finance, operations, and technology.
Awesome, and I'll jump in and give a quick intro about Hanover Research as well. So Hanover Research is an AMA, or American Marketing Association, Gold top 30 market research firm. We've completed well over 20,000 research reports, with 500 specifically in the software sector. I personally kind of manager of our CR software sector, and I've seen many, if not most of those studies in different ways. And so really excited to jump in and get to this one today.
Fantastic.
So let me dive in and kind of give a quick background for this study, what we're looking at, where we're going, and kind of get into the meat of it. So just as some quick context, we've ran this study twice now. The first one was back in kind of early 2021, and now we're going into 2022 and Q1 of both times. And just trying to capture and understand what the Office of Finance and Office of Accounting is really looking at, and what they really care about. So where are they succeeding? Where are they encountering bottlenecks? How are they evolving to business needs and challenges, and the daily tasks that are impacted by that? And really, how have their priorities changed? And we ran this kind of on the front end when COVID first hit, obviously for the first wave, and got a lot of insights and got some different details. But we really want to run this again to see what's really been that long-term impact, what hasn't just been that initial response to adapt to the current situation, but how are companies continuing forward, and what is the progress or changes that have been happening over that time. So both waves, just as quick background, we've ran through online panels like we've done with most of our studies. And after data cleaning and quality control, we had about 500 respondents per wave, with over 1,000 respondents between the 2 waves. So really a really strong, robust data set. You can see kind of a variety of roles, a variety of different company sizes, kind of leaning towards the larger companies, obviously, but a pretty good mix there. And then one other last detail I did want to mention, just timing wise of when this went out, this would be kind of back in Q1, so thinking probably like February into March a little bit, when a few geopolitical things obviously have happened since then in Ukraine. There's been obviously a lot more inflation in the past few months, and then more kind of the recent bear market and other stuff that have happened. So I think there is some interesting context that we captured from that vantage. I think there's been some interesting changes or shifts that have happened since then. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of good, rich data here that gives us insights into how companies are adapting to the current dynamics and just the situations that they're facing today.
Wow, that's fantastic. So James, I want to explore how some of the operational friction suffered by these finance teams has shifted and evolved in the last year or so. So I think having this year-over-year comparison is fantastic. It really lends some compelling perspective to the microeconomic trends and the indicators of large and more around macro shifts in the marketplace. So if you look at the challenges with existing budgeting and planning processes, the three common themes are they're way too slow. I mean, just folks are just struggling trying to get through the budgeting process. They're often too complex where teams lack the skill or resources and they struggle through the execution of their responsibilities. And then finally, it's just too inflexible. It's a heavy reliance typically on IT because they might own the actual software that they're utilizing, or it might be something in terms of what they're doing with their spreadsheets and how they're consolidating those spreadsheets. So the three top areas that I see where folks are struggling is just too slow, too complex, and just not flexible enough for the organization to sustain a vibrant budgeting cycle.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it's been interesting. I mean, this has been kind of consistent, but I think it's been just so much more pronounced, especially I think this last one being too inflexible really carries through everything else there, where if nothing else, COVID and supply chain disruptions and geopolitical tensions and famines and other things that have happened over the past years, if nothing else has taught us that we have to be adaptive. We have to adapt to change, have to adapt to changing markets and different drivers and other things there. And I think when you don't have that flexibility, that's where you hit these two pain points of we can't update our processes fast enough to adapt to the market needs and the challenges that are evolving of a hybrid workforce or other large macro trends that are in play. And then same thing of the complexities there, if you keep going back to your IT team to try and republish a dashboard, whatever it may be, it hits that same issue, just not being fast enough to really be up and running and keeping things going there. And this obviously,
you hit it spot on, James, because you look at the drivers, the traditional drivers have been basically just magnified, whether it be supply chain issues, whether it be fuel costs that have gone through the roof, and other aspects that have taken on some new complexities in terms of how organizations adapt to those different changes and all those different drivers. So that's what's causing that inflexibility and making it too complex. You're spot on.
Yep. And it's interesting of the compounding nature of that, of like fuel, then obviously goes to transportation, to all these other layers where it just keeps things interesting, we'll say, with everything that's going on right now. So let's jump in.